If you suffer from insomnia, there's some proven evidence-based techniques to dramatically improve your sleep. And the best part is, these skills can last your entire life and they're completely drug-free. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Michael Breus, the sleep doctor here. I know it sounds too good to be true, but there are plenty of non-medical treatments for insomnia. So in this video, I want to talk about 6 of the best treatment options out there. Remember, when you go to a doctor to talk about your sleep, there's a process that's going to occur here. Initially, you're going to get an assessment and then eventually a diagnosis. And then they're going to take one of 2 routes. The route we're going to talk about today is going on the non-pharmacologic route, so not using drugs in therapy at all. I do want to let you know that I have an entire video looking at pharmacology, and if that is something that you and your doctor decide to do together, there's another video that you can watch for that as well. So let's break these down into the 6 different types of non-pharmacologic or behavioral treatment for insomnia. Number 1 is sleep hygiene. Again, everybody should probably get a little bit of sleep hygiene. And these are the basic recommendations here, is you want to regularize your sleep-wake schedule. You gotta be consistent. Remember, your body functions best on consistency, and most people with insomnia are very inconsistent. Avoid stimulants and stimulating behavior. Caffeine, nicotine, illegal illicit substances, all of those things are really going in the wrong direction. Also stimulating behavior, like right before bed, it's probably not the best idea to play a video game. Also, establishing a relaxing bedtime routine is critical to overall sleep hygiene. And once you've got structure and you're in the process, your anxiety begins to reduce, and that's what we're looking for. Obviously, you need to have a conducive sleep environment. I personally believe that sleep is a performance activity. And so you've got to have the right equipment to perform well. And especially for folks with insomnia, this turns out to be actually one of the more critical aspects. Good news is we've done a ton of reviews of mattresses and pillows here on Sleep Doctor. So if you ever want, check those out because there's a lot of good information there. Other things, no naps. If you got insomnia, the worst possible thing you could do is nap. And I get it, you're exhausted and you're just dying for like 5 or 10-minute nap. What that do is that lowers your sleep drive and it makes it very difficult for you to fall asleep. So once again, general guidelines of sleep hygiene, no naps. I also really try to eliminate alcohol and caffeine. Neither one of them is necessary in your diet, and both of them mess up your sleep in very big ways. If you already have insomnia, adding alcohol or adding caffeine to the mixture only makes it more complicated. So I really try to get people to lower that, at least during the treatment phase, so that way we can get them sleeping better again. I have to tell you that one of the best things that you can do to improve sleep quality, even if you're an insomniac, is to have regular exercise. It couldn't be more important, and the data is super duper clear. You don't have to run a marathon. 20, 25 minutes of cardio and maybe some weights is all you need, and it will absolutely, positively help your sleep. And then another big one, and this is so hard to do, is don't look at the clock. So many people look at the clock, and what does it do? They instantly do the mental math, and then they're upset. Oh crap, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I still haven't fallen asleep. Their anxiety goes up, and everything is out the window. So these are some great guidelines that you can use across any of the treatment modalities. And I will tell you that in some cases, just sleep hygiene alone fixes it all. The second one is called stimulus control. So this is again, an idea that you have classically conditioned yourself to do more than sleep in your bed. So what we have to do is reestablish the bed as an only sleep and sex place. You and your partner, you're not working on your computer, you're not watching TV, you're not even reading. You want to go to bed only when you're sleepy, get out of bed when you're unable to sleep, and wake up at a consistent time, including the weekends. You've got to get up at the same time, including the weekends, for this to work. One of my favorite techniques is called sleep restriction. Now, if you remember earlier in the video, I said this is not something that you want to do on your own. This is something that you want to do with the help of a sleep specialist, psychologist, or somebody who's familiar with this technique. So what you do is you determine their average sleep time, and then you set up a bedtime that is equal to their sleep time. So let's say on a sleep diary, somebody says, I fall asleep at midnight and I wake up at 6. Well, then quite frankly, I want them to go to bed at midnight and get up at 6. We're going to restrict the amount of time that you can stay in bed, and we must make the wake up time consistent 7 days a week. No daytime naps are allowed because we want to build up sleep deprivation. We build it up naturally so that way you fall asleep quickly and you stay asleep. I will tell you, it takes people aback at first because they say to me, you know what, Dr. Breus, I was just so exhausted. I figured I'd get in bed at 8 o'clock just in case I fell asleep so I could catch up on my sleep. Remember, sleep does not work that way. While you might be exhausted because of whatever, because you haven't slept in a long time, you still have a circadian rhythm, and melatonin only comes off at certain times based on something called your chronotype. So at the end of the day, sleep restriction can be very, very effective if you do it with a professional. Now, one of my favorite things to do, and I include this in almost every type of therapy, is some form of meditation and relaxation. My favorite is something called progressive muscle relaxation. This is really cool, where you actually tense and relax your muscles, starting at your toes and going all the way up to the top of your head. Personally, I've never made it all the way through because I fall asleep when I'm doing it, but it's a great relaxation tool that I personally use quite a bit. Now, there's also something called diaphragmatic breathing, which is where you are taking big, deep belly breaths. I talk about this in several different videos on stretching and breathing and things of that nature. This can be very, very helpful, but the best part that it does is it forces you to focus on your breathing, not the monkey mind that's going on inside your head. And so with a lot of people, when I have them breathing, I have them counting because it's very difficult to count and think of something else at the same time. So for example, 4, 7, 8 breathing is a great technique that I teach a lot of my patients because it helps lower their heart rate below 60. It forces them to think about the counting, which makes them not think about something else. And lo and behold, the natural sleep process takes over and they're doing much better. Meditation and guided imagery work roughly the same way. It really just depends upon what mode do you want to be in. Do you want to be in a guided imagery mode where you're listening to somebody tell you about a beautiful image? Or do you want to do meditation? Do you want to do gratitude? Do you want to do breathing? I don't care. But what I want you to do is give yourself enough runway to land the plane. So when you've got insomnia, one of the biggest things to be able to do is learn how to relax your body. And sometimes you can do that just before sleeping or even if you wake up in the middle of the night. Now I want to get to the biggie, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. So here's what's really interesting is we know that cognitive behavioral therapy for depression works exceedingly well. And it turns out that some of the distorted thinking that happens in depression also happens with sleep. So as an example, if somebody has performance anxiety, like right before they go to bed, they start to get anxious, guess what? That causes heightened arousal, which leads to insomnia. If you have unrealistic sleep expectations, like I need to sleep every single night for 8 hours and 14 minutes, I got news for you. That isn't going to happen. Or maybe you feel hopeless because you can't figure out how to fall asleep. All of these things cause a heightened level of arousal. So we use cognitive therapy to address those things. And what ends up happening is we now make people hopeful. We now give people realistic expectations, and we don't have performance anxiety. They know and understand what they're capable of. This reduces the arousal and leads to sleep. The thing that you have to understand is everybody out there can actually control their own sleep. By using the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, I have personally found for myself, as well as for almost all of my patients, that this is the way to go. The last one is called Circadian Re-entrainment. This is also something that I like to use in addition to CBT-I, along with relaxation therapy and good sleep hygiene. But this forces you to use light and melatonin to bookend your sleep into a certain time. So as an example, let's say that you are a super extreme night owl and you could only fall asleep at 4 o'clock in the morning and you could only wake up at, let's say, 11 o'clock the next day. Well, what we would do then is we would use bright light therapy and literally push your circadian rhythm backwards and give you melatonin at that particular time. But I'm going to be honest with you, very, very few people are that far off in terms of their circadian rhythm. What most people are is off against their chronotype. Now, you might not know what a chronotype is, but you've actually heard of the concept. And if you've seen any of my videos, you know that I'm a big chronotype guy. Your chronotype is your internal genetic sleep schedule that might make you an early bird or a night owl. If you don't know which one you are, and actually a lot of people think they're one and they turn out to be another, do me a favor, go over to sleepdoctor.com and take our quiz to figure out what your natural circadian rhythm is. Once you get that down, then you actually know when your body wants to sleep. So here's the good news is every single one of these therapies does appear to work. Some appear to work better than others. So stimulus control, sleep restriction, and relaxation appear to work about the same. But if you combine them in what we call a multi-component therapy, we actually see a much bigger effect. These have an effect specifically on your ability to fall asleep, or what we call sleep onset latency. And we also know that all of them in the exact same dial-up actually end up changing your wake after sleep onset, meaning that it's actually lowered after you have treatment. So there's two things that we look at for insomnia treatment. We look at how quickly you fall asleep, and we look at how many times you wake up afterwards. Every single one of the treatments that I have explained so far does appear to lower all of that. So less awakenings and lower sleep onset, which is exactly what we're looking for. Again, the multi-component appears to do the most good for almost all people. I like to have a practical approach, as you've seen me say. So number one, review your sleep hygiene. Limit your time in bed. Try to establish that regular wake-up time based on your chronotype. Try to go to bed only when sleepy, and do me a favor, get out of bed if you can't sleep. Personally, oftentimes I'm using what's called the combined approach. So I might work with a patient's doctor and I might say, hey, we've got somebody who's only sleeping 3, maybe 4 hours a night. It's going to be hard to teach them the sleep hygiene and the stimulus control and all of those different things because they're just getting such a small amount of sleep. So sometimes we might use a pharmacologic intervention to break the cycle of insomnia. Keep them on drug for, let's say, 3 to 4 months, then begin to taper them off of drug while doing the sleep hygiene, sleep education, stimulus control, sleep restriction, and behavioral components. This way, we can attack it much faster depending upon the severity of the disorder. A lot of patients like this idea because they can utilize the pharmacologic intervention for a short period of time to kind of get them over that hump and then teach them the skills so that way they have much more successful sleep in their future. But look, I really believe in the effectiveness of CBT-I and some of these other methods, and I've actually seen it be a life changer for a large number of my patients. Let me know in the comments if you've tried CBT-I and what your experience was. This is Dr. Michael Breus, the Sleep Doctor, wishing you sweet dreams.